Hey, it's Tristan from www.primaledgehealth.com. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. It is cold here in the Andes of Ecuador. I just had a cold shower, got goosebumps all over me. I'm ready to start the day. So Jessica and our 2-week-old son just went back and fell asleep for a little bit. You get very little sleep when you got a baby around. And Ariana's inside, chilling out after breakfast. And I'm here making a video about intermittent fasting. So this video is going to be called What I've Learned from 4 Years of Intermittent Fasting. I'm trying to distill 4 years of knowledge and experience using this powerful tool that it can be very beneficial for fat loss, for health, for decreasing inflammation, for improving cognitive function, and for longevity. And one of the coolest things I think, one of my favorite parts at least about intermittent fasting, is it's kind of a gateway experience. It's kind of like a gateway diet, a gateway drug to ketosis. For me, intermittent fasting was what introduced me to the ketogenic diet. Now, I started intermittent fasting for fat loss, and it's a very powerful tool for fat loss. Not because it's like a magic wand, if you just wave it and you eat, within a 6 to 8 hour window, you'll magically lose body fat regardless of the composition of your diet. This is not true. You still need to make sure that you are getting sufficient protein, that you're getting sufficient essential fatty acids. You still got to make sure that you're eating a balanced, nutrient-dense diet if you want to be healthy, live long, and achieve the body composition you desire. And you can't just do intermittent fasting and think that it's impossible for you to gain weight. If you overeat, regardless of what diet you're on, if you're on a ketogenic diet and you're eating 500 grams of fat per day, how are you going to expect to tap into body fat? If you're eating 500 grams of fat per day, how are you going to drop body fat? It's not going to happen. So we got to use common sense. The laws of energy balance still apply. But I started doing intermittent fasting for fat loss. And I kept doing intermittent fasting because I enjoyed the cognitive benefits of it. During the day, especially during that part of the day when I was fasting. Now, in the beginning, I used to skip breakfast. I've learned to do it otherwise, and the way that I teach it now is very different. I'll talk about this later on in this video, but I used to push back my meals till about 11 o'clock, and I used to eat between the hours of about 11 and 7 to start. That's kind of how I started off. I did that for a few months, and it worked very, very well. But what I found was that I felt so much better. I felt so much mentally clear. I felt so much more focused, so much more emotionally balanced, and so much more energized before I ate. This is kind of weird, right? It doesn't really make sense to you if you're just starting out this diet. You feel better when you're not eating? You have more energy when you're not eating? Absolutely. I mean, the way that intermittent fasting benefited me was through balancing my blood sugar. I was used to having these meals, having my blood sugar shoot up, and then crash. So I would almost always, after every meal, feel lethargic, feel slow, feel more foggy, have more brain fog, and just feel a little bit less optimal. I found that when intermittent fasting, I felt much better before those meals. Now, I eventually discovered the power of ketones. The power of the ketogenic diet, where you actually maintain that state of ketosis, which intermittent fasting is a decent introduction to. When you're intermittent fasting, you will be flirting on the outskirts of ketosis. You will have some elevated blood ketones throughout the day, and those elevated blood ketones will result in improved cognition, improved blood sugar balance, decreased inflammation, and many other benefits. So I found that the most enjoyable part of intermittent fasting for me was not that I could drop body fat, and it wasn't necessarily enjoyable just not eating throughout the day. But I found that, especially as I started pushing forward and putting more time into it, I found that I just felt so much better in that fasted state. So that was my introduction to ketosis. I started hearing about ketones, the ketogenic diet, and I realized that that state that I was tapping into, that state of clarity, of improved cognitive function, of decreased inflammation, and of just feeling better in general. I found out that one could maintain that state all day long through a ketogenic diet. So that was one of the first awesome parts about intermittent fasting. It introduced me to keto. It introduced me to the concept of, first of all, you don't need that many carbohydrates. You don't need sugar to fuel yourself and to feel energized. In fact, removing sugar from the diet, removing that blood sugar up and down roller coaster that we're going through all the time, can have massive benefits for your life, not just body composition, but for how you feel, how you function, how you focus throughout the day. That was one of my favorite parts of it. So another good thing about the intermittent fasting that I discovered that I really liked was the decreased inflammation. When you give yourself more time to digest your food, when you're giving yourself this 16 to even longer, 16 to 20 hour fasting window, where you're getting into deep autophagy, which is the recycling, the destruction, the getting rid of old waste, the getting rid of the weak cells, the killing off of the weak parts of the body so that the strong cells can survive. This is also very beneficial. Now, I find that my digestion, especially when I do intermittent fasting the way I've learned to do it, the way that I do it now, and I'm not always doing intermittent fasting, I haven't been doing it every day for 4 years. It's a powerful tool, but it's not the only tool at your disposal. It has its limitations, and in many situations it might not be advisable to use intermittent fasting. But what I found was that my digestion greatly improved when I gave myself time in between, when I gave myself time to digest. So most people do intermittent fasting by skipping breakfast. I teach it the opposite way now. Through my studies, through my research, through my experimentation, I have found that instead of pushing back breakfast and waiting till 1 o'clock in the afternoon or even later, some people don't eat till like 6 o'clock in the evening. I found that eating earlier in the day, pushing those calories and pushing that eating window to earlier in the day, rather than extending all those calories to the later parts of the day, I find that it can improve your blood sugar. I find that it can improve your digestion and just improve the way you feel in general. Now, a lot of people are under a lot of stress. A lot of people don't sleep enough. A lot of people work night shift. A lot of people spend time poisoning their mind with the television, allowing these news networks to tell them what to be afraid of, what to think, what to feel, and what to be. A lot of people are letting this poison into their life, letting this poison into their eyes, into their ears, into their heart. And they're walking around with this heaviness, with this burden. They're not sleeping well. They've got jobs they don't like. And a lot of us are not well equipped to deal with the stress of modern life. Now, you compound that with skipping breakfast. You've already got dysregulated blood sugar from sleeping poorly, from carrying around stress with you all the time. You've already got that blood sugar dysregulation. Then on top of that, you start skipping breakfast and increasing your cortisol levels in the morning. It can lead to crashes and stalls in your progress and just not feeling optimal. So a really common question that I get, especially from like women who are training really hard, is I've been doing intermittent fasting and I'm doing a ketogenic diet, but I just feel like crap. I just feel horrible. You tell them, I usually will tell them, stop doing intermittent fasting, eat breakfast, increase your caloric intake so that you can fuel your workouts, and these women end up feeling a lot better. If they've lost their cycle, it usually ends up coming back when they start feeding themselves sufficient fats and getting on a proper circadian rhythm and setting that circadian rhythm by dropping the cortisol in the morning, by eating a meal that is high in fats and protein, which will upregulate fat metabolism also. So what I've found is that eating in the morning rather than eating in the evening can be far more beneficial for health, probably for longevity, but definitely for blood sugar levels, especially in people who are like type 2 diabetics trying to lose weight. So take it to heart. You might want to flip the script on how people are teaching intermittent fasting. Breakfast can be very important. It's all contextual though. I'm not saying all the way across the board that that's how everyone should do it. All right. So We've talked about digestion. We've talked about the blood sugar being more stable throughout the day. We've talked about the decreased inflammation, the mental clarity. What I also found was that my mood was improved from intermittent fasting as well. Now, one can speculate on why. Many people have found that ketones have a marked improvement on mood. There have been many, many studies on depression and how depression is linked to inflammation in the body, especially in the gut and the brain. Now, the gut and the brain are connected through something called the vagus nerve. This vagus nerve is very, very important for your health, for cognitive function, and for regulating your central nervous system. So if your digestion is improving, if your inflammation is decreasing, if you're getting on a proper circadian rhythm, and if you're using intermittent fasting and leveraging this tool to improve autophagy, to get rid of the waste matter, to improve your detoxification pathways, and to increase the levels of ketones in your body periodically. Now, even if you're on a high-carb diet on intermittent fasting, you will be having some elevated blood ketones at parts of the day, most likely. This can result in improved mood. Decreasing your inflammation can improve your mood. Now, intermittent fasting, and especially ketogenic diets, have been proven to increase BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factors. These are compounds which help create new connections in your brain. So, these compounds, BDNF, low levels of BDNF have been associated with depression. Improved BDNF has been associated with improved cognition and improved mood. So, one can speculate on why and how, but a lot of people find that their mood is greatly improved when they use tools like intermittent fasting and ketogenic diets. So those are a lot of the good things about IF that I've found. Here's a few of the possible mistakes that I might be able to help you to avoid, and a few of the downsides of intermittent fasting. So the first thing, I talked about improving digestion earlier, and there's a flip side to that. Alright, so if you are trying to cram in all your food into a small window of time, especially for people who are doing like bodybuilding style diets, if these dudes are eating just like ridiculous amounts of protein, absurd amounts of carbohydrates, and if you're eating processed foods and a bunch of crap, you can create major digestive issues by trying to cram that all down in 1 or 2 meals. So my suggestion to avoid this is to ease into intermittent fasting. That's the first one. And second of all, don't try and be in a caloric surplus while you're doing intermittent fasting. For most people, this is not going to be very easy to do. It's not going to be very easy to do a caloric surplus while intermittent fasting because you'll have to eat so much in those meals, and that can throw off your digestion. If you're just throwing a bunch of crap down the hatch and hoping that you're going to digest it, you can run into some major problems and create some long-term issues with your gut bacteria. The gut microbiome is incredibly important. We talked about the vagus nerve, connecting the brain and the gut earlier. Inflammation in the gut equals inflammation in the brain equals you no function very well throughout the day. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Don't try and overeat in those meals. Don't try and push your meals so far back. Don't try and, like some people, they wait so long. They wait till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon to eat, and by that time they're so hungry that they end up gorging. And then it's just that negative binging guilt cycle again. So try to avoid that. Moderate your food intake. It's not magic. You don't just lose weight no matter what if you do intermittent fasting. Just like a ketogenic diet won't magically make you lose weight. It will create a situation hormonally where it's very easy to restrict calories. It will create a lot of satiety, so most people will naturally start restricting calories when they're doing a ketogenic diet, especially if they're doing a ketogenic diet with intermittent fasting. It makes it very easy to restrict calories. But that doesn't mean that you can't still gain body fat on keto or while intermittent fasting. So, be careful of that. Don't just stuff your face a bunch so you get inflamed. Don't destroy your gut microbiome through shoving too much food down the hatch there. Another possible downside, which I kind of touched on earlier, is if you're under stress, if you're not sleeping well, if you're working night shifts, if you've got a poor circadian rhythm, if you're exposed to a lot of environmental toxins and stuff like light pollution, which is going to boost cortisol throughout the day. All that blue light, all that artificial light, these fluorescent lights that we litter the entire world with, these are creating a stress response, a low-level stress response in our body all the time. So, you compound that stress with the stress of fasting for an extended period of time. In some individuals, this can create a negative response, and you can get the opposite of the health benefits that you're trying to derive from intermittent fasting. So some individuals will find that doing this in this way, where you're under a lot of stress, if you're not sleeping very well, and you're pushing back your breakfast too long, a lot of people can find that their blood sugar regulation gets hindered, that their blood sugar goes off, especially type 2 diabetics. So if you have blood sugar dysregulation issues, eat in the morning and skip dinner. Do it that way. Skew those meals to earlier in the day and ease into it. Don't stress yourself out too much doing it. So another bad thing can be timing. With social situations, with work and stuff like that, the timing of your meals can be a little bit difficult on intermittent fasting. That can be easily remedied by simply finding a nice routine that works for you. And be flexible. Don't be dogmatic about it. You didn't fail if you eat 2 hours outside of your eating window. If you go off of intermittent fasting for a few days, you're not going to lose the benefits of it. I think a lot of people, they get stuck on certain tools, right? There's a lot of people that promote certain tools and they get really stuck on, I have to do this all the time. If I'm not doing it this way, like this person says, I'm not going to get the results. You don't have to be so dogmatic about it. Enjoy the flow. Life happens, and you can't always arrange your meals around a set schedule. So sometimes you got to eat off schedule. Don't trip about it if you do. You didn't fail. Intermittent fasting is not magic. Remember, just because you eat outside of your eating window doesn't mean you're going to suddenly gain weight or something. You can just keep your food intake consistent and you'll be fine. All right, so another thing about intermittent fasting that I do want to say is for people trying to gain muscle. You're trying to gain weight. If you're trying to gain body mass, intermittent fasting might not be the way to go. Now, in some individuals, if you formulate it correctly, you can do an intermittent fasting diet and gain weight. I mean, we're probably talking about lean body mass here. You want to gain lean body mass, not fat mass. But for most individuals, intermittent fasting is not going to be the ideal way to gain significant amount of weight and muscle. So there it is, guys. What's that, 18 minutes? All right. Try to keep it short and sweet. Intermittent fasting, after 4 years of doing it, there's my attempt to distill and transmit some of that knowledge to you. Now, I will say one more thing about intermittent fasting. High carb versus low carb keto on intermittent fasting. By far, I found the most benefits from using intermittent fasting in the context of a ketogenic diet, of a low carb ketogenic diet. If you are adapted to burning fat as your primary fuel, if you are keto adapted, if you are very efficient at breaking down body fat, at using ketones to fuel your brain, your heart, your organs, at oxidizing those fatty acids to fuel your muscles. If you're well adapted to it and you've been doing it for a while, intermittent fasting is a breeze. You can easily fast for 48 hours if you're well adapted to ketosis. Now, nothing wrong with a high carb diet, but if you've tried intermittent fasting, you enjoy some of the benefits, why don't you start looking into ketosis? Why don't you look into the ketogenic diet? You just might find that all the benefits you're deriving from intermittent fasting can be extended throughout the day even longer and improved upon and expanded upon. through utilizing a ketogenic diet. So there it is, guys. You can find more at www.primaledgehealth.com. I want to thank everybody for supporting us with the new Ketogenic Edge cookbook that just came out. We're just so stoked to finally have it out. We've been working on this for over a year. Jessica, throughout this entire pregnancy, our son was born 2 weeks ago. She's sleeping with them right now. She worked so hard on this. She really distilled years and years of knowledge of high-fat, low-carbohydrate meal prep, of food preparation. She's put all this knowledge and experience into this one book, and it's really cool to finally put it out there. Thank you guys so much for the amazing response to this cookbook. I'm really glad you guys are enjoying it. There's so much in it. It's a nutrient-dense cookbook. I mean, she shows you how to make pemmican in there, how to render tallow. It's very, very... I don't know, we're just stoked to finally have it out, guys. So I'll put a link down below. The Ketogenic Edge cookbook is out. Over 130 recipes, almost 300. I think it's like almost 250 pages, like 230 pages, I think it is. This is a dense book. It took a long time to put this together, and I'm really, really happy with the response. Everybody that's been enjoying it so much. Thanks, guys. So that's on sale right now. It's on sale from $24.99. It's on sale for $20 on our website, www.primaledgehealth.com. So intermittent fasting is a powerful tool. It's not a magic wand, but it's a powerful tool. Can be used for weight loss, for improving cognitive function, which is what I prefer to use it for, and for longevity, for improving your health. Alright, so I'll see you guys next time. www.primaledgehealth.com.